Let's dive right into this explainer and look at the adventurous, highly unlikely origin story of one of the world's absolute most iconic brands. Now, we aren't just looking at some boring corporate timeline today. No, we're exploring the raw, totally uncertain, and deeply human beginning of an empire that was built literally from scratch. And honestly, this matters to all of us, because every massive achievement you can think of, it usually starts with a single, highly questionable step.
Let everyone else call your idea crazy. Just keep going. This brilliant quote is basically the core thesis of Phil Knight's entire journey. It really sets the tone for a quest that was just filled with doubt, bluffing, and this relentless forward motion. It's the urgent advice he managed to give himself as a young man, and it perfectly captures what it takes to bring something completely new into the world. You know, you just run, and you don't even think about stopping until you actually get there. For this, we're drawing directly from Phil Knight's memoir, Shoe Dog. And let me tell you, it reads way less like a dry business manual and much more like a thrilling adventure story. It's all about a kid from sleepy Oregon who looked around and decided the world is made up of crazy ideas. He wanted his life to be meaningful, to have purpose, and above all else, he wanted it to feel like play.
Part 1. The Crazy Idea, a 1962 quarter-life crisis.
So, picture this. It's 1962, back in rainy Oregon, and a 24-year-old Phil Knight is just dizzy with existential angst. It's a feeling a lot of us know all too well, right? On paper, this guy was set. He was an Oregon grad, a Stanford MBA, and an Army veteran. But internally, he felt pale, rail-thin, and just completely crippled by shyness. It's like he was the only person in 1960s America who hadn't yet rebelled or broken a single rule.
Well, during a morning run, he decides to revive this concept from an old Stanford research paper of his, a paper that literally everyone, including his classmates, totally ignored. But the idea was actually brilliant in its simplicity. Japanese cameras had recently made massive cuts into the German-dominated camera market. So Knight figured, why couldn't importing high-quality, low-cost Japanese running shoes do the exact same thing to the German-dominated athletic shoe market? He called it his crazy idea.
Part 2. Crossing the threshold, selling the trip, and a detour in Hawaii.
To actually pull this off, Knight miraculously convinced his respectability-obsessed father to front him $1,000 for a global backpacking trip. But on a layover in Hawaii with a college buddy, the plan immediately goes off the rails, but kind of in the best way possible. They decide to just stay, surf Waikiki, and get local jobs. Knight quickly learns he absolutely hates the hard sell of encyclopedias. His extreme shyness just made the constant rejection unbearable. But he actually thrives selling mutual funds for this boiler room operation, mainly because he's simply speaking the truth using numbers. Even so, this faint inner voice keeps telling him to keep going. So he buys an open plane ticket and heads west.
Part 3. Faking it in Japan, the Great Bluff in Kobe. Before even taking his big business meeting, Knight immersed himself in Zen philosophy in Tokyo, really trying to let go of his own ego in linear thinking. He knew he needed that mental clarity for what was coming. Eventually, he finds himself at the Onitsuka shoe factory in Kobe. The unspoken tension of World War II is still hanging incredibly heavy over this table of young Japanese executives. Think about it, just 18 years prior, American bombers had devastated Japan. And now this American kid is sitting right in their boardroom listening to the static hum in his head as he prepares his pitch.
Then, the crucial moment arrives. They ask him this utterly terrifying question. "Mr. Knight, what company are you with?" Cue the massive adrenaline surge, because he suddenly realizes he has absolutely no company. Zero. He's literally just a guy in a green Brooks Brothers suit who got off a very dirty train. He hasn't incorporated a business, and he hasn't sold a single shoe. And these executives are just staring at him, waiting for the name of his grand American enterprise.
So, in an absolute panic, he blurts out, "Blue Ribbon Sports." It was a total fabrication. He pulled the name entirely from the blue track ribbons hanging on the wall of his childhood bedroom back in Oregon. To his mind, that bedroom was the safest place in the world, and those ribbons were the one thing he was unapologetically proud of. But, just like that, the facade was built. He dives in and pitches them on the vast, untapped potential of the American shoe market. Bluffing his way through the rest of his pitch, he asks for samples of their Limber Up model and immediately wires his dad for $50. And the crazy part? The executives don't throw him out. Instead, they huddle up and actually decide they want Blue Ribbon Sports to represent their Tiger shoes in the United States. I mean, no way, right? He walks out of that room a full-blown partner in international trade.
Part 4. A global education, the pilgrimage.
Now, instead of rushing straight home to wait for the shoes, his curiosity wins out. Knight is basically a castaway at this point. Fiercely lonely but just aflame with wanderlust, he embarks on this rapid, sensory overload pilgrimage across the globe. He absorbs the overwhelming poverty in Hong Kong, communes with the ghost of General MacArthur in the Philippines, and watches funerals right on the banks of the seething Ganges River in India. He travels the African bush in Kenya, stands beneath the colossal Sphinx in Cairo, and wanders through the gorgeous rubble of Rome. He's really just soaking in what it means to be human, you know? Looking at what lasts and what inevitably fades.
But the absolute highlight of his entire trip is the Acropolis in Greece. He stands there totally mesmerized by the Temple of Athena Nike. While he's looking at it, he notices a carving on the marble facade of the goddess, the bringer of victory, leaning down to adjust her shoe strap. Think about that. 25 centuries of history and the literal goddess of victory is adjusting her footwear. It's this incredibly poetic detail that embeds itself deep, deep down in his subconscious.
Part 5. Teaming up with Bowerman, the ultimate ally. After returning to Portland as a worldly but exhausted accountant, Knight has to wait a soul-crushing year until the sample shoes finally arrive in 1964. But when those creamy white shoes with the blue stripes finally show up, he knows exactly who to show them to first, his old track coach, Bill Bowerman. Now, Bowerman was this fiercely intimidating World War II veteran. He literally called himself a professor of competitive responses. The man was so relentlessly obsessed with his athletes' footwear that he would tear apart and cobble together shoes out of anything, even kangaroo skin and codfish.
Bowerman's whole obsession was entirely mathematical. He actually proved that removing just 1 single ounce from his shoe removes 55 pounds of lifting over the course of a mile. Let that sink in. If a runner takes 880 steps in a mile, saving 1 ounce per step equals 55 pounds of saved energy. That energy translates directly to speed, and obviously, speed translates directly to winning. Knight knew for a fact that Bowerman would appreciate the lightness and the rock-bottom price point of these Japanese Tiger shoes.
So they have this incredibly tense lunch at the Cosmopolitan Hotel in Portland, and Bowerman totally shocks Knight. Not by ordering a dozen pairs for his team, but by demanding to be his partner. Knight went in just hoping to make a sale to his intimidating old mentor. Instead, it was like a voice from the heavens asking to join the business. With a simple handshake over some hamburgers, Blue Ribbon Sports, the very company that would eventually become Nike, secured its foundational partnership.
This incredible origin story leaves us with a pretty powerful final thought to ponder. We just walked through how a shy kid from Oregon leveraged a totally ignored research paper, a massive bluff in a Japanese boardroom, and a partnership with his formidable track coach to start something legendary. We all have an inner crazy idea rattling around in our heads, just like Phil Knight did on that morning run. So the real question for you today is, what is your crazy idea? And honestly, what's stopping you from just taking that first step? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this sparks something brilliant in your own journey. Keep going.